Let's now dive into detail and look at the process, monitor and control project work. Now fundamentally this particular process is used to take information on how the work within the project is being performed and make sure that the deliverables or products, along with the approach in which they are being produced, line up with the project plan. So it looks at how the overall project is progressing and, if required, takes any necessary corrective action by raising change requests. At its very essence, it compares the work results and does whatever is required to make sure the two are harmonized with each other. This particular process feeds directly from the previous one we covered, which was direct and manage project work. So let's look at the inputs then. Quite a few here, but they all make good sense. Dealing first with schedule forecasts and cost forecasts, these come from the control schedule and control cost processes. And here earned value management will be used to measure what has actually occurred against the plan so that any variances can be determined by taking some form of corrective action. Work performance information, which is work performance data that has now been analysed, contains important control metrics, often in the form of percentages or ratios, which allow us to make informed choices in the monitor and control work process, again to determine appropriate actions. Now the enterprise environmental factors also have a bearing on how monitor and control project work is carried out. I used the example in the last module of an oil rig since it seems a fairly extreme environment for any project and acts as a very good point of reference. The fact that you're on an oil rig, probably in sometimes inclement weather, then how you monitor and control project work will need to be done in a very special way. Safety here is probably paramount, but also how you go about monitoring work may need, for example, sending divers down to determine the latest state of build. So the enterprise environmental factors, even when you're safe back in an IT environment within a land-based building, you will still need to consider such environmental factors. The usual ones I talked about much earlier, such as culture, structure and work ethic, just to name three. In a similar way, the organisational process assets will determine how monitoring and controlling actually works. For example, monitoring, you may well have particular tools or processes or templates that will aid you in monitoring. And when it comes to control, there may well be some control procedures that need to be gone through for this particular project. And the final input is validated changes. This, of course, is after changes were not only approved, but also carried out. But they still need to be brought back into this particular process to validate or check that they actually were executed and rolled out properly and that the changes have been implemented or embedded appropriately. So they're an input as well, because if such validated changes haven't been embedded properly, then this will cause an output change request to actually go back round the loop one more time if it's necessary. Let's look at the outputs then from this. As a result of monitoring and control work, it would be absolutely obvious, I hope you agree, that change requests will likely emanate from this. As a result of finding out what's actually happening versus what you'd planned had hoped to happen, very often you'll need to make some form of change requests. Notice that work performance information comes into here. Remember, that's the work performance data that has been analysed in some way. And here in monitor and control project work, it's converted into a work performance report with extra information such as actions required and who's responsible and other supportive data. As a result of monitoring, controlling actual work versus what was planned, it's highly likely also that the project management plan needs to be updated, and you'll remember the various plans within it, such as the schedule baseline, cost baseline, and so on and so forth. And in addition, whatever other project documents you have other than the project management plan, updates may be necessary there. For example, if you have an issue log, as a result of monitoring and controlling work, new issues may arise. which of course will need to be input, which may mean once they've been looked at, they actually turn into a change request if the issue is serious enough and it warrants being done formally through the change request system. Quick look at the tools, starting with expert judgment. Hopefully that's sort of fairly obvious, because here you're monitoring first and then controlling project work. Wouldn't the project manager want to take some views, opinions, or to bring in or to seek out particular experts to do with whatever the products are and whatever the monitoring and controlling data shows? You may not need these people on the team permanently, but certainly as part of monitoring and controlling, you may need to bring them in temporarily to use their knowledge, skills and experience. In the same way, in monitoring and controlling project work, having well-run meetings is a very effective way to gather data, probably with the expert judgment folks in the meeting itself, and use this as a technique to determine exactly root causes on why you're going off plan and what is the best actions to take. And talking of root causes, analytical techniques. These type of techniques, which we'll look at quite a few by the way when we get into quality, looks at the raw data and amongst other things looks for root causes and to spot trends. Also of course to make sure that the project is operating within tolerances in terms of risk and in terms of schedule and time, for example. If you've got a project planning tool, you may well be looking at data from that and doing what-if scenarios to see if forecasts can be modified and what type of actions are needed. Don't forget that two of these inputs, schedule and cost forecasts, will contain earned value data, so analytical techniques will certainly be using some of the forecasting and index formula of earned value to analyse exactly what the actual status is and future forecasts so that a corrective action again can be taken. Don't worry, we are going to cover earned value in very great detail in a later module. And let's not forget your project management information system, the framework around which the project communicates, gathers data and gives data. You can ask for reports to be printed off from this and use it to drive, for example, both expert judgment and meetings. So don't forget your project management information system. It plays a key role here in this particular process. Let's now just summarise the process of monitor and control project work. It's concerned, as I've said, with monitoring all the processes within initiating, planning, executing and even closing process groups. What it does is to report and compare actual project results against the project management plan. The purpose here is to determine variances and use that as an input to taking corrective action. Analysing performance data from the team, effectivity, actual work and so on and so forth, and determining if corrective or preventative action should be recommended. Monitoring and approving change requests as and if they're made. Monitoring risks, so they are identified, reported, the status of them, that's the progress of the risk itself. As an example, it might be not yet happened, has happened and we're dealing with it, or whatever. And the risk response plans are put into action. Don't forget that this will actually happen in execution. What we're doing here is monitoring how well those actions are working and whether they're having the desired effect. Documenting all appropriate product information throughout the project life. What we mean by product information is the progress of them to the point where they are fully authorised and accepted. Gathering, recording and documenting project information that gives key project status, measurement of progress and forecasting. Back when I was a project manager, there was a fairly standard form that we needed to consider when reporting back to our management, and that was looking at plan data in terms of cost and time on a monthly basis for the whole of the life of the project and looking at variances and doing that for both cost and time, and then making comments on risks, issues, any current issues, and giving a forecast of the future as we currently see it in terms of end spend, project end date, key milestones and so on and so forth, and then wrapping up by saying within the next month here's what we will have achieved. So it acts as a great audit trail so that management can ensure that we're still in control. So as a result of that, during monitor and control project work, we can update the cost and schedule information that is reported back to stakeholders such as the project team, management, customers